Okay, hi. My name is Dr. Chris Wilhelm. I'm a professional historian here in Brunswick, Georgia. And this is a presentation on the history of Brunswick's Confederate celebrations and the monument in Hanover Square. The material in this presentation is all primary research that I've been doing recently. None of it is based on there is a lot of stuff circulating in the community, documents or plaques or things like that. This is not based on any of that stuff. As a professional historian, I'm going to go back to the primary sources and use those primary sources to construct a history. And that's what I'm doing here. Let me preface all this by saying I'm not done with the research. The research is still ongoing, and so I might add, I might need to come back and add something or clarify something because I'm not done with the research. It's with the whole COVID, it's become more difficult to do research, but I've been able to do a lot of it. And I think what you're going to see in this presentation will be surprising because I think there's been a lot of myth in the way we think about this specific monument, and I've really uncovered a lot of things that either the community has forgotten or didn't want to talk about or we've papered over these things. So this is the based on primary sources, and I'm happy to share those primary sources. Okay, so May 1st, 1878, in the Brunswick Advertiser, there was an account of something called Decoration Day. And this is the first reference that I find to the Ladies Memorial Association. It's not called Memorial Day, it's called Decoration Day. And they had a procession from Hanover Square to the Oak Grove Cemetery. There was a speech focused on scenes of the dead past, dwelt with emphasis upon the living present, and pointed out the lessons they taught. The author of the article wrote that the speech brought up memories of the dark days of the war, bloody scenes. The Ladies Memorial Association strewed flowers of the graves of the dead soldier boys, Federal and Confederate alike, and the crowd dispersed to their homes. Crowed should be crowd. It's an error in my error. So this is a very kind of somber, sad affair, and that's very consistent with what historians have written. A lot of these earlier events, the focus is on honoring the dead. It's a sadder affair. It's a procession. It's a decoration day. 1879, the next year, there was no honoring at all of any Memorial Day celebration. There's an editorial that talks about, hey, how come we're not doing this? And it doesn't seem like there were a lot of celebrations about this or even events until the mid 1880s. Although I'm still researching this, so maybe that's not true. Maybe I will find some, but I don't know. Doesn't seem like there were any. On March 28th, 1885, in the Advertiser and Appeal, there's an article talking about the reorganization of the Ladies Memorial Association. This is the next reference to the group that I found. The president, the vice president, the three vice presidents, the secretary, treasurer, and they are holding meetings to reorganize the Ladies Memorial Association for Decoration Day, still calling it Decoration Day. Maria Madden is kind of J.M. Madden right here, is sort of the central figure in the Ladies Memorial Association, at least in the kind of local historical view of things. The research that I've done seems to support this. She seems to be the central figure, although you notice she's a VP, she's not the president. So maybe excuse me, maybe that changed. At least until the early 1900s, seems she became less important around 1900. I need to do more research on this. But I'll just say there's a lot of local mythology around here about her and her family that I have found not to be true. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, she didn't own slaves. Well, that's not really true. She came from a slave owning family. She married into an even larger slave owning family. I will say this, women did not own property in the South before the Civil War. Sometimes if you were a widow, you could own property. Even then, a lot of times a brother or someone else would control your property. But women, when they got married, did not own property anymore. So saying a married woman doesn't own slaves, it's not correct in this instance, but it also kind of ignores the history of women's rights. Her first husband was Thomas Spalding McIntosh. He was a major in the war. I've seen local materials claim he was a general. He was a major. He died in Antietam in 1862. She remarried in 1868. She remarried a man named James Madden, who was a surgeon in the war. He was a doctor after the war. Later, he became a banker. Again, I've seen a lot of local materials claim he never practiced medicine again after the war. He was so scarred by the war that he never again practiced medicine. Doesn't seem to be true. There's a lot of mythologizing around Maria Madden. There's you read the local materials, the stuff that you see about her, and she's been constructed to be this kind of saintly figure who dedicated her life to remembering Confederate memorials. And I don't really see that based on my research. Um, the reality is often more complicated. Okay, so that we'll talk more about her later. On an article from 1888, the Memorial Day celebration was held. So it's now called Memorial Day. It's not Decoration Day, but it still is mostly focused on honoring the dead. Processions, prayers, poems. It's not a parade yet. It's still a procession. It seems to be focused on honoring the dead. The 1889 event is really kind of when things start to change, which is very consistent with what historians have written. The lost cause developing in the 1890s into the 1900s. In 1889, the Brunswick Riflemen participate. This was a veterans group in Brunswick. I think they later became affiliated with the United Confederate Veterans. That organization was founded in 1889. Again, consistent with what historians have said. Others existed before that, but they all kind of merged with this group. The Brunswick Riflemen has the same name as Company K of the 26th Regiment of the Georgia Infantry, which was soldiers from Brunswick. And at this point, the procession is kind of transforming into a parade, more of a military parade. 1897 Confederate Memorial Day was likely the largest event held in the city's history. Two generals were at the event, General Clement Evans, who commanded the Brunswick Riflemen, and General J. Floyd King. The newspaper at the time, the Brunswick Times, wrote, "It was a very impressive military parade. No city in Georgia will have a more creditable observance of this sacred day." The parade had 400 people in it. So that is big. That's pretty big. I'm impressed. The speeches honored veterans. There was a brief tribute to General Grant. I believe Grant's birthday is like right around Confederate Memorial Day. At the same time, the speech insisted the war was not a rebellion or a civil war, but a war between the organized armies of two organized nationalities. One nation, the South, contending defensively for its life, but while the other was striving aggressively to destroy, which very much reflects the lost cause. So you're kind of seeing these lost cause ideas entering the celebration. Most of the event was parades and speeches. There was one sentence in the newspaper on flowers on the graves, and that's where that article's from. They did present at this day a drawing of a monument by a local artist named Reed E. Lamont's, which that his monument was almost assuredly not the same monument put up in 1902. I would like to research this individual a little bit more. I've found a couple things. But we know by 1897 that the monument is being planned. We know that they are putting up a planned monument, and we are seeing, sort of what I talked about in the last video, a memorial celebration about the lost cause, and perhaps the soldiers, the veterans, are becoming less central to the events. 1902, the monument is erected, and this event is enormously controversial at the time. We're talking today about how this monument is controversial, and I find it really interesting that it was controversial in 1902 for different reasons. But this was a controversial monument right away. There were allegations of financial fraud in the raising of money for the monument. There was a split between the veterans groups, the Riflemen, and the Ladies Memorial Association, and that split persisted for years. And essentially what happened in 1902 is before the monument was erected, the veterans groups basically audited the Ladies Memorial Association, and their findings are published in the Brunswick News in 1902. And I've made that article, I can make that article available. That article is available on a Google Drive. which I'm happy for everyone to read. The investigation found that for the last 5 years, the Ladies Memorial Association had really only been 3 or 4 women. It had never been incorporated as an actual organization, and they did not have meetings. It was simply 3 or 4 women who were essentially controlling the fundraising process, controlling the design of the monument, and in control of the Memorial Day celebration itself. That was what they did. They planned the Memorial Day Association every year. They raised money for this monument, and they chose the design. It's thundering. I don't know if you can hear the thunder. They chose the design for the monument. And so this does not seem to have been a real expression of the community. And this is certainly what you get from the riflemen. The riflemen are a little upset that they have not been consulted on the design of the monument. I'll just add, obviously, there was no input from the black community on this, who did have large number of Union Civil War veterans. Many black soldiers fought in the war for the Union, 200,000, I believe. And there was also a large camp on St. Simons. There was a very large camp on St. Simons of black soldiers, many of whom were, almost all of whom were escaped slaves, who were trained on St. Simons. And that history has been ignored. I don't think there's any historical marker on that, and there's certainly not a lot of attention paid to it. Certainly, the Confederate Memorial in Brunswick does not also honor those soldiers. Okay, they did an audit of the finances, and they said that the financial processes reflected a lamentable lack of business records, and they said they found almost no records from which facts may be definitely determined. No business meetings were held. They didn't have receipts. They didn't have the documentation. They found that the organization had raised about $14,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $42,000. Of that money, $634 was spent on the monument. The actual monument likely cost $450, and I'll tell you why I think that in a minute. The rest was probably paid by someone locally to construct the base of the monument. The base and the monument are two separate materials. And then they spent another $100 on the beautification of Hanover Square. Where did the rest of the money go? Well, there was almost a $600 loan made to James Madden, Mary Madden's husband. About 42% of all the money raised by the group was given as a loan to James Madden. Adjusted for inflation, that's about a $17,000 or $18,000 loan. Apparently, he agreed to pay beforehand an amount of interest on the loan, which is kind of weird to me. And this is one of the really big things that the riflemen were upset about. You raised $1,400 for a monument, and yet you're only spending $600 of it on the monument. You're going to give the rest, supposedly a loan, to Mary Madden. And so I want to be careful about what I say about this. At best, this is this would be illegal today if you had a nonprofit charity and you took 40% of the money and loaned it to the husband of the president of the organization. Your nonprofit would be dissolved. It's highly irregular at best. It is theft at worst. A cynical interpretation would be they stole the money, they raised the money and stole it. And that's not unheard of when you talk about charity and fundraising, and we're going to raise money for a monument. I've done a lot of research on James Madden, and I'll tell you what I found. In 1870, he ran an apothecary. In 1880, he was a banker. 1884, he was elected to the county commission. In 1889, he was the president of the Merchant and Traders Bank. He founded the bank as well. I don't know the date the bank was founded. In 1897, his bank went bankrupt. In 1900, he was listed as a landlord on the census, so he was no longer a banker. In 1901, he declared bankruptcy. In 1904, he had his property seized for non-payment of a mortgage, and in 1906, he was, apparently going really fast in his horse and carriage, and he was thrown from his carriage and died, and Maria moved to Jacksonville. Tragic story, but the timeline is suspicious and kind of adds up to likely serious fraud. 1897, his bank goes bankrupt. That's the same right around when they start planning the memorial, and by 1902 we find out that $600 was given to him as a loan. He had declared bankruptcy the year before and could not pay his more. It's doubtful that anyone thought this loan was going to be repaid. From the perspective of the Brunswick riflemen who are conducting this audit, they had to be outraged by this. 40% of the money you raised for veterans was, again, I want to be careful. Was this stolen or was this given as a loan? And hopefully it will be repaid back. If it is repaid back, what is the Ladies Memorial Association going to do with $600? Because they've already constructed the memorial, which cost about $600. So what are you even going to do with that money? There's no point. The Ladies Memorial Association no longer needs money. So what would they even need the money? So this is incredibly troubling and suspicious, and caused a tremendous amount of controversy. The Brunswick veterans, the riflemen, they are also called the Jackson Camp. They're very split about what to do with the monument's dedication. They did vote to accept the Ladies Memorial Association's invitation to join the celebration, but there was a lot of dissension. And in fact, Judge Horace Dart, who was the founder of the Riflemen and the head of the group, resigned his membership in protest. This is Horace Dart of the Dart family. This is probably the most prominent family in Brunswick's history. His brother, Colonel J.E. Dart, also resigned from the Riflemen. Judge Horace Dart said that the moving spirit in the purchase of the monument had treated those near and dear to him with abject discourtesy in the past. I don't, it's a very vague statement that's typical of how someone would try to say something in 1902 and not say anything at all. So there's a lot of dissension. The group unanimously voted down the request from the Ladies Memorial Association to construct a speaker's platform for the event. So this was kind of a, hey, a unanimous vote to no, we're not going to do your bidding. We're not going to come in here and construct a speaker's platform. This is the protest they're making. And the conflict continued over the years. Here's the unveiling ceremony. Here's a picture. It's kind of a bad quality picture. The Savannah paper reported reduced attendance. The Brunswick paper reported that the veterans' ranks were greatly cut down. They don't really tell you why in this version of the paper. You have to go back and read the paper before the ceremony to understand why the veterans were not there. A lot of veterans chose not to go to the unveiling of the Veterans Memorial. Stores did not close. Normally, you read about this event every year in the paper, and the stores all closed down for the paper. They didn't close this year, and there was nothing on the content of the speech. As a historian, I really want to see the content. I really want to see the speech. I really want to know what the speech was, and I haven't found that. I did find, however, the same day there was an event at Waycross, and there was a speech given at Waycross by this individual. The Waycross paper called it the best memorial address ever delivered here, so I was intrigued. And this speech showed from a legal view that the South was right. The North were the rebels. The Constitution protected slavery. When Lincoln was elected, the states in the South realized slavery would be jeopardized and withdrew. He calls the Confederate Constitution, and this is a lawyer giving this speech, calls the Confederate Constitution the most perfect piece of organic law that was ever spread upon parchment, and called the Constitution. The speaker referred to federal actions in the war as injustice and oppression. And it's a really interesting speech. It's a mix of a lot of lost cause stuff, but then there's also some stuff on the real causes of the war. This is sort of correct. That's sort of why the war happened. And so you get this interesting blend of a mix of lost cause and some real history. The speech is notable. There's almost nothing said about veterans. 1904, and so this split between the Ladies Veterans Memorial Association and the Brunswick Riflemen continued. 1904, the two organizations planned separate events, and I think something similar happened in 1903, although I need to go back and do more research. Veterans went ahead with theirs, led by DART, and the Ladies Memorial Association canceled their event. They claimed that they owned the event, it was their event, and the veterans were hijacking it. I'm still conducting research, trying to figure out how long this went on for, but it looks like it went on for years, and I found quite a few editorials saying, hey, we need to fix this problem here. What was the source of the conflict? I mean, it's pretty obvious to some extent, but I would like to do more research on this. I think it is. I think there's two things going on here. I think veterans were upset that they weren't being properly honored. I think there were veterans who did not think that that monument properly paid them due. Uh, and we saw this. The events became much more about celebrating the lost cause and less about veterans. These veterans did complain that they were not consulted about the design and that they were not consulted about the content of memorial ceremonies. One of the issues that the veterans had was that the Ladies Memorial Association was planning these events without consulting them on it. And I think their view was, hey, we're the veterans. Shouldn't we be included? And the answer is yes, if the event was actually about celebrating veterans. But if the event is more about the lost cause, then you don't need to refer to those people. I'm sure they were also upset that 40% of the money raised did not even go to a monument. Okay, what is the design? Who designed the monument? Where did this monument come from? Here is a picture of the monument um, today, and here's a close-up picture. And what I have over here is an advertisement from the Monumental Bronze Company of Connecticut. So the Monumental Bronze Company was a company that made, for lack of a better word, cheap statues. These were statues made of what they called white bronze. And white bronze is basically zinc. They made zinc statues. They were made in pieces. They were modular statues. So you can see here the head is different. Certainly the hat is way different. The head looks a little different as well. Everything else looks the same, down even to some of the pleats. I mean, it's exactly the same from the neck down. These were modular statues. You could get different feet, you could get different hands, you could get a different head. and they were pretty cheap. Originally, these were made for Union, for American, federal Union memorials throughout the North. And when the South started putting up all their memorials, this company said, oh, hey, here's a market. We need to break into this market. And so what they did was they changed the belt buckle. This belt buckle says US. This belt buckle has the stars, some kind of stars and bars flag on it. They changed the belt buckle and started selling these to the South. And I believe they sold around 150 of these throughout the South. And that's what this monument is. I did a lot of research on this because I want to be sure it is. It's hard to know with certainty, but I'm like 99% sure this is one of these zinc statues. Here's another one of these statues made by the made by the Monumental Bronze Company. These are two, they're exactly the same, but you can see they're kind of modular. You can kind of switch them up. So that's where this came from. And here's the price list from the Monumental Bronze Company. The statue, the soldier cost $450. Here it is down here. And you could get different designs. You could get slightly different statues. There were also statues made of marble that came from the Marietta Quarry. This is a statue in Macon, Georgia. And you really can tell the difference between a marble statue and a zinc statue because they weathered differently. Zinc is, at least according to that company, was a very good, it was also very cheap, but a very sturdy substance for a statue. Marble tends to wear away. You can see this is worn away. And in fact, granite wears away too. And if you go to the statue and you look at the granite inscription, you can see a lot of it's worn away. Zinc does not really wear away. It gets discolored, but the edges are sharp on this statue. This is a sharp, sharp statue. I have seen lots of local materials say, "Oh, it's a marble statue." Again, I'm 99% sure it's zinc. There's tons of these statues throughout the South. They're kind of cheap statues. Marble statues are much more expensive, way more expensive than what we know the Brunswick statue cost. There is an inscription on the statue. There's 4 sides to the inscription. Confederate States of America, when it was erected, tribute of love from the Ladies Memorial Association to the heroes of the Confederacy. This to me is the most important, inscription in honor of the Confederate soldiers who died to repel unconstitutional invasion, to protect the rights reserved to the people, to perpetuate forever the sovereignty of the state. Uh, you know, this to me is totally lost cause. And frankly, it says more about the lost cause than it does the soldiers. In honor of the soldiers, and then the rest of it is who defended the lost cause, which of course this is not what the war was about. The war was not an unconstitutional invasion, and it was not about states' rights. So to me, as a historian, this monument is historically inaccurate. And then this down here is actually from a poem called March of the Deathless Dead by Abram Joseph Ryan, who is often referred to as the poet laureate of the Confederacy. Let me show you some other veterans memorials. Here is a more recent Civil War memorial in Georgia. This is in Blairsville, Georgia, Union County. Union County was a Union stronghold. The Appalachians were not excited about secession. And this was erected more recently. I couldn't find the date, but it was not part of that initial wave of memorializing in the 1890s, 1900s. And this really does honor the dead. This is a list of the soldiers who died in the Confederacy, and then you have a list of soldiers who died who were members of the Union from Union County. And Appalachia did not tend to have a lot of slavery and did not tend to have a very large black population. So I would suspect most of these Union soldiers are white. There were white Southerners from the Appalachians who went and fought for the Union because they were fighting for what they believed was their country. This is a monument that honors the dead. It does not honor the Confederacy. It does not honor the lost cause. This is what a veterans memorial, normally looks like. I have another picture here of the brand new Brunswick, Georgia's Veterans Memorial. We have a brand new Veterans Memorial, and here's a picture of it. And again, this is a monument to dead veterans. This is what the point of the monument is. And you have a list here of every soldier from Glynn County who died in, going all the way back to World War I. So in thinking about Brunswick's memorial, I hope that as a community we can think about some of these questions. What was the original purpose of the memorial? What purpose does it serve today? And what does it teach us about history today? What do we learn that's accurate about history from this memorial? What do historians think of these memorials? A lot of historians would argue we should tear these statues down. Others argue that the statues themselves have historical value, but only in terms of what they say about the South in the 1890s, 1900s. So the historical value is not at all really what they communicate about the Civil War, but what they communicate about the lost cause and white supremacy. That's the historian's view. But I really hope that we as a community can think more deeply about what this memorial says, why it was established, why it was put up, the specific context of how it was put up, and then what is the value of it today? Does it have value as an object that commemorates history? Does it have value as an object that honors the dead? Hopefully that's some food for thought. Thank you for listening.